You know, originally I saw your comment. I was just going to go ahead and heart it and just move on. But I figured, we got a bigger audience, right? So, sounds like you've wrenched quite a bit in your life, as have I. I mean, and in another one of my videos I just published, actually, I referenced your comment in that video. It's like, I should probably shoot a dedicated video on this. Anyway, so that's why I'm here. So, I can, 0 to, call it 250 foot-pounds without a torque wrench. I can get to within very, very, very consistently within like 3 foot-pounds without a torque wrench. It's just a feel for it, right? It's been a bit. I'm very, very, very familiar with what 85 foot-pounds feels like, 116 foot-pounds feels like, 180 foot-pounds feels like. That said, recognize that a couple of things are true, and it needs conversation. Oh, there goes my background. Oh well, I love it. It needs conversation. The first thing is your torque specs are influenced. How tight does this thing feel is influenced by how dirty the threads are and whether the threads are lubricated or not. And so it's like, okay, that matters. In addition to that, recognize what a torque spec is. A torque spec is like that point, and so you can look up your own torque specs and say, hey, I got a M14 by 1.5 thread pitch fastener made out of this hardness of steel or whatever it is, and you can figure out what's torque spec on that fastener. Fine. Or you can just look it up in the book and it's already done for you. So that's great. What's the torque spec of an oil rail bolt? What's the torque spec of a valve cover bolt? What's the torque spec of a hold down bolt? Whatever it is, right? Crank bolts, cam bolt, whatever. The issue though is, please recognize what torque specs are. They are that point where the threads start to hold on to this thing so freaking tight, where you go into the elasticity curve of the metal, and so you don't over torque it, because then you're just stretching the bolt out. You don't want that either. But you don't under torque it, because it's just going to go ahead and it's going to back off on you. And so there's a whole other conversation here about lock washers and star lock washers and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, okay, but not all these things have those. In fact, it's very uncommon in automotive to have inside of an engine to have a lock washer up inside there. Well, why? Hashtag torque specs, right? And so just realize that even though the German torque specification Gutentite will get you there for the vast majority of things, like you're torquing down an alternator, what percentage of us whip out the torque wrench and verify that we're at 35 foot-pounds, for an example. But it's like, yeah, that's tight enough, right? But when you're doing things that are more critical, right, like you're working on something that really seriously matters, like main bearing caps as an example, this is not something you want to guess on. And also recognize that when it comes to threading a bolt into aluminum, there's a whole other conversation there as well, as far as how strong are these threads. And if you've got a TPI count, threads per inch count, so you have like M12 by 1.5, that's a very different holding amount power than a fine fastener would have. And so I'm just saying, respect the torque specs. They're there for a reason. So if you don't want to have problems in life, just mind the torque specs, clean out your threads to get the most accurate count, lubricate them if it calls for it. If it doesn't call for it, leave the lube out, and off to the races. All right? Thanks very much. FICMRepair.com. We're all in this together.